Nobody lied to us. They just handed us someone else's design and told us to build our lives from it. And so we did, and here we are. This is You Know This Isn't It. I'm Lisa Wilson, and this is where we start. I was 9 years old the first time I figured out how money worked. Not from a class, not from my parents, from a bag of candy in a neighborhood full of kids who wanted what I had. I take my babysitting money, walk to the wholesale store, buy candy in bulk, bring it home, and sell it around the neighborhood at a markup. Enough to buy the clothes I wanted at All Popcorn, my favorite clothing store. Enough to feel like I was in control of something, and enough to feel like I was actually building something. Nobody taught me that. It just made sense to me. That's really important. So I want you to remember that, because we're going to circle back around. Because what I'm going to tell you today is the story of what happens when someone who is wired a certain way, built a certain way, spends decades trying to fit themselves into a world that was never designed for them, and what happens when they finally stop. I grew up in a family that was, let's call it, complicated, to say the least. Toxic is definitely more accurate. And in the middle of all of that, I found one place that felt like home. My mom's best friend owned a salon in Beverly Hills. And from the time I was 14, every summer vacation, every spring break, every holiday, I was there. Working, learning, breathing. The salon was the first place I ever felt like myself. It was actually a place of refuge from an extremely toxic childhood. I didn't know it then, but I was already being shown something. This is where you belong. This is how you're built. Pay attention. But the culture had other plans. Here's what the culture said in the 80s when you were a creative kid who didn't fit the formula. Go to college, get a degree, build something legitimate, something people can point to and say, ah, she made it. Right? The American dream. The pressure wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. It was in the silences, the looks, the way certain doors opened for people who followed the path and stayed closed for the people who didn't. I know you know what that's like. I know you've seen it, maybe experienced it yourself. And if you were an artist, a creative, someone who learned differently, thought differently, saw the world through a completely different lens, there was a word for that. We called it dropout. You want to know what was playing in the movie theaters when I was a teenager trying to figure out who I was? Grease. And right in the middle of it, beauty school dropout. That was the message. And that was the culture at that time. That's what was handed to us. If you chose art over academics, if you chose craft over convention, if you couldn't make your brain work the way the system demanded, you were a dropout. You were less than. You were someone who didn't quite make it. You were labeled, all the labels, dyslexic, ADHD. No one ever stopped to ask, maybe this child just doesn't fit this system. Maybe this isn't how they're wired. Maybe they don't think like everyone else, right? Because actually the creatives on the planet, there's a lot more of us than you realize. We've just been molded to become something we're not. But I really want to be clear about something. This was not truth. It was programming. And most of us today are still running it. You know, I tried college, met with a college counselor, started the classes, watched the whole system shut me down. Not because I wasn't intelligent. It definitely wasn't because I was incapable. It's because I wasn't designed for it. I would get into my classes and I would start drawing stick figures. I would zone out. I couldn't even follow the content because I wasn't interested in it. Really, I could give a shit about it. You know, I think differently. I see things through a different lens. I always have, and the world calls that a deficit. But what I've come to learn is that it's not a deficit, it's a design. We are all very uniquely designed. We all have a different map, every one of us. And learning yours is part of what you've come here to do in the world. Learn who you are so that you can live your life in rhythm and in sync with how you're designed. That's where it all changes. But at 18 years old, nobody has a language for that yet. Kids don't know. They have been so bullied into a cultural system that says you do it this way. And they make it so funny to watch because they make you believe that we have your best interest. You know, we offer the arts. But then they override it with things that you don't even realize are molding you to pick something other than your natural gifts. Do you believe in this day and age, they're still grading children on a caste system? You know, that shame and judgment. That child's nervous system only feels the energy of, I'm either good or bad. And that's how we start to move in the world, how we get controlled, programmed, manipulated to do the thing. What's the thing? The thing is the piece that's going to support people in industries where they are needing to fill the seats. If they don't have employees working in their businesses, they're not going to have a successful business. If you're out there thinking for yourself, that's not going to support big business. You know, so as a child, you just try harder, you push more. And as an adult, we do the same thing because it's so ingrained. It's become an imprint at a cellular level. So we contort ourselves to fully shape into what the world says we should be. Until one day, you just stop. For me, that day came after a year of trying to make college work and fit myself into something that was just not congruent with me. So I made a decision. I was going to send myself to London. I was going to study hair with the experts in my field. Because again, that's what the culture said. You know, if you follow the experts, you'll get successful. So I sent myself to London. I was going to build something on my own terms. And at the time, that was rebellion. Looking back, that was the first time I actually listened to my design. I wanted to be the best in my field. And you know what? London for me was everything. I threw myself into me in such a different way. Got a job at the top in my industry. Ultimately doing hair shows. Becoming the best at what I did naturally was a gift. And eventually, when I came back to the United States, I got the top job in my industry. Eventually, I moved to Aspen, Colorado. I opened up a salon, had the high-end clients, the steady income, a reputation that took years to build. And from the outside, it looked like I had it all figured out. You know, because that's a lot of what we do in our culture, isn't it? We look outside and we think the outside is the thing. People are successful, they're financially wealthy, they have the things. And you know, following the formula, that might work for a little while for sure. You know, I had followed it to a T. Not the college formula, but the entrepreneurial one. Work hard, build the clientele, grow the business, scale it. And I did all of it. And here's the thing about following a formula that isn't yours. Yeah, you can make it work. How many of us know exactly how to override our system? Something says, don't do that. And before you know it, you're in your head about it, telling yourself all the reasons why you should do it. And all those reasons are built on what you've been taught to build from, how to create your life, how to do relationships, how to parent your children. It's everywhere, outside in. And you know, it might work for a while. You can actually build something real, something that will generate the income, that will look good and successful on paper, that looks successful in the eyes of your peers. People around you sitting there saying, wow, look, she really did the thing. And you can still be completely, utterly building from the wrong blueprint. You know, I also got married, had a son. I built the whole picture. But somewhere in the middle of building all of it, I looked up and I realized I was doing this alone. My husband never took a single day off from his job to support me and our son. Not one. Never. He continued to work his schedule exactly as it was set up from the time I met him to this day, actually. Never once adjusting it for anybody other than himself. Everything fell on my shoulders, the baby, the business, the household, all of it. I was running a salon, raising a child, holding a marriage together, and I was burning out at every level. I didn't even have words for it yet. That's when my business mentor walked into my life. I was at a precipice. And he came in and handed me a book, The E-Myth. I sat down and I started reading. And there is a line in that book, if you've ever built a successful business and you are still the technician, still working in it every single day, then you're not running a business. You're running a job that owns you. Let me just tell you, in that moment in time, wow, I put the book down and I sat in the middle of my kitchen floor and I cried a river. Because that was exactly where I was, not just in my business, but in my life. So I did what you do when you're smart and driven and determined to figure it out. I invested in the best. I joined the top mastermind groups, the most successful business coaches I could find, online marketing funnels, frameworks, every strategy, every formula, every blueprint that the most successful people in my industry said worked. I listed my business for sale. I decided I was out and I was going to build online. I was going to reinvent myself and I was going to do it from the bottom up. But I was going to do it the correct way this time. Because even though I did it what was perceived to be the correct way the first time, this time I was going to do it the correct way based on what was happening in the industry and in the field with those who are very successful. So I did the work, all of it. Do you know my business sold and closed in 2 weeks at a full price offer because what I built was great. It just wasn't great for me in any way. So I showed up, I implemented, I was following the system, doing it the way the culture taught us to do it. And every single time, it collapsed. The money would stop, the momentum would die, the thing that worked for everyone else in the room would fall apart the moment I tried to create it that way. I kept thinking I was doing something wrong. I must be missing something. Maybe I'm not working hard enough, but that's not true. My business mentor, I remember him saying, you know, Wilson, you're going to have to work a lot more than 40 hours a week. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm working 7 days a week around the clock. What do you mean? I put my entire life focused on building my business and raising my child. That became my focus and my intention. I put down the extracurricular things and dove in. So I go back to the drawing board, find the next mentor, join the next mastermind, follow the next formula. And guess what? It collapsed again. Oh my goodness. Years of this. 6+ years of this, of doing everything right. Until one day, my business mentor looked at me across the table and said something I will never forget. He said, "Wilson, you've done everything right. I've watched you. You've implemented everything. You have shown up every single time. I honestly don't know why it's not working for you." I want you to sit with that for a minute. Because if you're listening to this right now, I think you know that feeling. You've done the work, you've followed the advice, you've invested in the right things, you've shown up, and something still isn't clicking. You know this isn't a discipline problem. It's definitely not a mindset problem. How many of you have dove into the mindset work? I know I have vision boards, I have my mantras I chant. You know, no amount of mindset is going to override your design. It's just not, doesn't work that way. It just never works that way. It's not a you problem. It's your design. And that's exactly what we're going to get into in the next episode, because that moment, sitting across from my mentor, hearing him say he didn't know why it wasn't working, that was the crack in the field for me. And everything changed after that. I am Lisa Wilson. This is You Know This Isn't It. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye for now. You know when your life no longer fits you. Most people spend years trying to outrun that feeling. You didn't find this show by accident. Every episode of You Know This Isn't It unpacks the survival strategies keeping us stuck in lives that stopped feeling like ours a long time ago. Head to radicallyauthenticyou.com and get the free guide, This Isn't It and You Know It. I'm Lisa Wilson. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.